with that. And like I said, we're going to go through this one, and y'all can ask a lot of questions, I hope, or if you've got, yeah, I've seen that, or like that. And when we get through with that, if there's some time left and we want to, we can go back and pick up anything else that you need to hear. If you weren't able to get to one of the other workshops, we can, go back and pick them up. But this one's called, does anybody see my keys? Because that's usually what's said the most around our house. I have them, I know I have them because I have a car. Those cars do come with keys. So it's a matter of finding them. Our ADD teenagers seem to have the same problem. Only once have we misplaced a car, though, and not the keys. She says, well, I have the keys. And she was very proud of herself. The problem was she forgot where she parked the car. And we had to wait till practically everybody left the mall to be able to find the car. Because I had no clue, and I'm like directionally challenged. I can park and go in, and if I don't park in front of, what is it, El Chico's, on my line, I can only park in one of two lines. Because if I park anyplace else, it's a goner. I'm not going to find it. So I know that's how I make sure my little coping mechanism is in place. I can park in front of El Chico's in one of these two lines. And if I have to sit there and wait and drive around a while, that's just, the price I have to pay for doing it. But it's one of those two lines I did. She felt like she could remember. She went in and shopped for like 2.5 hours. And after about 4 hours called, and she said, I know I'm late, but I have a problem. And I was always after. I said, you lost your keys. She said, no, I have my keys. I have them. They're right here. And I said, all right. So what's the problem? She said, I can't find the car. I said, oh, great. So where did you park? Well, if I knew where I parked, I'd have the car. So that was really a dumb question on my part. Where'd you park? I said, do you remember what you came in? What did you see when you first came into the mall? She said, a bunch of people. I said, all right. So now we've narrowed it down to 6 locations. Since you didn't walk into any clothing or shoes or anything, we'll assume you came in one of the 6 major entrances. So kind of go out there and stand and see what you see. And she literally had to wait for the majority of the people had left the mall before she could find her navy blue little Nova. That's just how old that car was. There was no fear that somebody would take it. We used to often wish they would. But that's how we came up with it. A lot of times we tend to hide in the closet. We don't want to know as an older adolescent, there's nothing wrong with me. I don't want to take my meds. I'm fine. It's okay. And as an adult, we tend to do the same thing. It's okay. I'll figure it out. I'll hide that and mask this. And so that becomes a real pattern of setting up. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. On this page here is some symptoms of ADD. And you notice that as they get to be, well, when they're young, we kind of put them in 2 categories. You're either hyper or you're not. And, we look at it and we say that boys have a tendency to be more identified with ADD than girls. And a lot of that is because the boys tend to be more hyper than what the girls. The girls tend to be more inward, withdrawn, more settled. And that's not to say that you don't have hyperactive girls. I have a very best friend that we've been friends since high school, and she gives hyper a whole new meaning. I've never seen even a little boy that can hold a candle to her. I mean, she's like 45 now. She does not slow down a wiggle. She is still glowing and going. But that's unusual to have a girl be that hyper and that sustained. Hopefully she would have learned a coping skill by now, but the only coping skill she has is they won't let us sit next to each other in a conference or something like that. They say we both wiggle too much and talk, not pay attention and be a disturbance. So they kind of separate us out. As you get older, and you'll notice as the children start entering into high school, they usually fall out in one of 3 categories. And you're going to see it really manifest itself depending on whether or not they were hyper or not as a child, but also depending on how they have chosen to shape that attention deficit, what supports were around them that they can call on, and it also uses coping skills. So usually we have the first type, which is that real extrovert, that real hyper, and those are kind of like the Robin Williams kinds. I almost can't watch him on late night TV, and I love Robin Williams. He's one of my favorite actors, but he makes me crazy. I have to sit there and watch him, and he just makes my insides like this. If I'd had to teach him in pre-K, one of us probably wouldn't be here today. That's kind of where my beginning started out. My training is in early childhood development. And I taught pre-K for a while. I subbed in for some high school stuff. And more or less have settled on over the last 19 years. My husband and I have worked in child care. And our child care looks a little different, I think, than what some of y'all have and what y'all work at. We've worked on campuses similar to Buckner in Oklahoma and another campus here in Texas, where we've had 10 or 12 teenagers at a time living in their facility. In '95, we moved down into the community and opened our own group home. And we take the higher end kiddos from CPS, juvenile justice, and some private. And these are the kids that are ready to go into residential treatment centers or ready to come out. And for whatever purpose, can't go back home. From foster care, we usually are the ones that get them right after, it's usually right after they've been out of 20 placements, and then they end up at our house. Because our house is considered a long-term. They're there till they graduate or die. That's what I tell them. You have two ways to leave here. You graduate or you die. And when they graduate, we either take them off to college or we move them into a work position where they can employ themselves. And we try to have them employable so that they can sustain themselves. So some of what we've said in the other workshops I know works whether you start at 2 or 20, because we've started at both ends of the spectrum, working with kiddos and trying to get them ready to go out the door. You have the internal responses, and these are the kids that have the attention deficit that are a little more quiet. They're going to sit there and withdraw. They're not going to answer real quick. They're not going to go, me, oh, come on, me. You know, they're going to be the ones that are back there saying, don't look at it. You know, because they don't want that, because they have that self-image of themselves as being stupid, not able to achieve. The third type are kind of what I call their overachievers in kind of an underachieving way. They almost have to become obsessive compulsive in order to stay focused and on task and do those precision type things. Because we used to say, oh, ADD people, you can't work in the bank. You can't do research. You can't do these things. And what we found is by the time that they mature out a little bit and are settling in, they've learned some good coping skills, there's quite a few ADDers that are almost obsessive compulsive to be able to get in there and focus and do that precise, detail type work. They'll take frequent breaks in that, but they can go back and do that type. They tend to do real good in military and accounting and you know, anything that requires that attention to detail. Rather than me put up overheads for this, and we normally didn't have a handout for this thing, I made y'all handouts. So you have the overheads, and I'm not going to swap them. Rather than have nothing, you all got the overheads, and we'll just swap pages. These are 29 positive things about ADDers. I wanted to sit down and we did some research and looked out and we said, what could we say as a general rule about ADD people that we know to be true, even as a child and as they grow older? And, you know, because we're so used to hearing all the negative stuff, you know, especially if you're the mom of one of these little darlings, and you go to pick them up, you hear the horror story of the day, of how the day went. Oh, well, he only slugged 3 kids today and shoved one little girl in. And, of course, Johnny's hair that used to be on his shoulder is now going to be the right length for school. You know, they've gotten in there and practiced their cutting skills. And, you know, you get all these little horror stories, and nobody ever says that, gosh, he's very energetic. He has, you know, just a winning smile. He is extremely inventive. I've never seen a kid take chips of paper and glue and be that creative that way. You know, what you hear is, look at that wall, it's going to take hours to scrape that crap. So, you know, we looked at this, what is it that generates? What are these positive things that we can look at? And here's about 29 of them. What we found out that, especially if the kiddos are not diagnosed until earlier on in life, go ahead and keep the door shut. That you don't begin to live stress-free, and you don't turn into a perfectly organized or different kind of person, but you do begin to be able to access help, repair feelings of low self-esteem, and to get your life back on track. Just being diagnosed isn't a cure-all to say, voila, now I know what it is. Okay, glad that's over, and go on. It's just really the beginning of a long ordeal. And as a parent of a child, it is a long ordeal, trust me. You're worrying. But if it's you, it takes on a whole nother twist to being ADD. There's an impact on lives. ADD impacts different people different ways, but this is pretty much the way it rolls. You have disorganization. Everybody says, oh, she's messy, she's sloppy. He's just too bouncy to be still. If he ever got still, he might clean up that desk. Who knows? You have an emotional reactivity to what's being said and done around you. The name calling and blaming and shaming that's going on around you, whether it's by the other adults in your life, the other kiddos, or in your own family. They tend to be underachievers. They don't push themselves out there because they're already feeling rejected themselves and very low themselves. So they may not tackle the science project that they want to do, but they'll do this one because it's safer and they'll know it'll be okay, and they'll get a grade. They'll pass. So they tend to be just mediocre until they get a real good handle on what it is that's going on in their lives. They do have low self-esteem, and they have, it says, impaired relationships. As little ones, we laugh and say, yes, they're very social animals. They make friends easily, but they just can't keep them. They wear them out, As adults, that doesn't wash because we're supposed to know how to do it better, so they call it impaired relationships. Well, what we find with the teenage girls is, and with the women as they get older who have the attention deficit, they tend to let relationships go. They'll try for a while and see, and they're not successful at it unless that other person is really keyed in on them. And how many high school boys do we know that are really keyed in on anybody but themselves? And I can say that because I have some. And just by nature, they're not nurturing little animals. And so they go from kind of one boyfriend to another boyfriend, and that's okay. But in older life, they tend to, when they have relationships with friends or with coworkers or in making decisions on getting married, they still have some of that same problems that go if they don't resolve those issues of self-esteem and shame and blame early on, because those things keep them from wanting to interact with the people. We go from seeing them being very social little animals as they get older into teenage years, where it's very iffy anyway because you want everybody to like you, and so rather than them not like you, you just assume they not know you to begin with and save yourself that rejection. Into being an adult where maybe you are now married and have a family, but you tend to withdraw, you're not that social or out or maintain those relationships that you have. And then ultimately it's depression. There's a big piece of ADD that is depression. Even as the kids, you can watch them cycle through that. They get overwhelmed by the amount of schoolwork that they're behind in, or there's a project coming up and they haven't started it yet. I am super at the last minute. I mean, I started at 7 o'clock, and by midnight I was home last night. I had gotten all the handouts printed and stapled and sorted and done all this. And Tim says, you've known about this workshop for months. And I said, I know. I had time. It was cool. My dad says I thrive on adversity. I rise under pressure. Open the door, Kenny. You're going to have to watch. And so you can come on in if you want.
I'm looking for my sisters.
Pardon?
My sister. I'm looking for my sisters.
So, it depends on how you look at it. I used to say, oh, I'm really good under pressure. I'm real good, to do that. And we'd be bowling, and I would be, down to the wire, and the last half of the third game was mine. I could pull it out every single time. But it's just, they always want you to do it all the time. It takes a major, mega effort to bowl that good all the time. And it takes a major, mega effort to be out there and to do it right all the time. And we're going to talk about that over here. If that sound bleeds in, I was trying to keep it where people could open it. We may just have to go ahead and close it, Kenny. I don't know. If that bugs you, they're singing across the hall. They got a little rowdy. I thought that they might maybe doing pub music or something over there, because they were just swaying and singing kind of long ago. To be successful with attention deficit, you must eventually restructure your life. You need to move through shame and guilt, and must ultimately redefine your sense of what it means to be a mature, confident, competent, I put woman because I am, even if after treatment you are still somewhat messy, disorganized, or forgetful. Those things are always going to be a piece of you, whether you're identified or not, whether you're in therapy or not. Those are always going to be oncoming things, and it depends on how you adjust and restructure your life to deal with those issues. Will depend on how quickly you're going to be able to get on and get by it. It used to be extremely upsetting to me to have a messy office, a cluttered house. My closet was just strange, and it's almost to that point. Once or twice a year, we just have to take everything out. And I do it under the guise of spring cleaning. Take it all out, throw it on the bed, wipe down the shelf, while I'm sitting here thinking, how can I make this stuff make sense in here, I go in here and I have a skirt and no blouse to go with it, and I wondered, why do I have a skirt with no blouse that goes with it? Where is that blouse? Tim assures me I've never had a blouse go with that skirt. So I don't know what I wore with it because I remember wearing the skirt. Look at when you're talking about the girls growing up and getting into high school when they're looking at job descriptions. And I wanted to put this down here because I thought this was really funny. It's called The Job from Hell. And it says, woman wanted to coordinate multiple schedules in very unstructured, distracting atmosphere. Must be able to process great numbers of details quickly and maintain very neat and well-organized environment. Must keep track of all important occasions, including social obligations, birthday cards, thank you notes to many people, as well as be responsible for all subsidies and niceties of life. Must be able to choose quickly and easily from a great number of options. Applicant will be responsible for all record keeping and for maintenance of all systems in the organization, as well as the upkeep on all equipment. For those interested, call 911, not ADD. And if you stop and think about that, that's the normal, if you had to write a job description for moms, those are exactly the very duties that moms do. And that's the thing that shoots us in the foot when we look at, what is it that we have to do? It's an unsurmountable task some days, and that's if your brain is screwing straight. If your brain's misfiring some on you, and you don't have those supports and those restructuring things in the house to help you along, then you really end up in trouble because you end up with a house that looks a lot like my office in my room. I would tell you my house, but Mary Ellen works really hard to keep me coached to keep that house clean. They also have another job description, which I thought was interesting. This is the basic things that women have to do. Multiple task coordinator, central household information coordinator, household maintenance manager, creating a comfortable and attractive home atmosphere, bill payer, budgeter, house cleaner, food preparer, time manager and scheduler, event planner, management and staff person, grocery shopper, clothes coordinating, social coordinator and hostess, packer for trips, travel coordinator, interior decorator design, holiday coordinator, president of the Social Occasions Obligation Club. That always cracked me up because, my family just gets so excited when they get a card from me. I buy cards, but by the time they have the birthday or whatever, I can't find where I put it. So I call them up, and usually a couple of days after, and I said, well, if you had a really nice card, you would have enjoyed it. If I find it, I'll send it. Secretary of the Hallmark Committee, the right card to the right person at the right time. That never happens. Chairman of the Volunteer Committee, the ADD organizer and coach for children with ADD, charter member of the Welcome Wagon. We willingly open our doors to friends and neighbors. Household mood engineer, setting the emotional temperature of the household. And this is often in addition to working outside the home. Those are all things that as women and moms, we end up having to look at. And when you stop and think the difference between an adolescent boy and an adolescent female in the high school times, and then you look at them as they get out into college and they're living out here on the young, what are some things that society has put in place for the men that they don't suffer some of the same things? What's there? Can y'all think of some? if both men have to organize and coordinate and do about half of that summit, they mostly have a secretary. And secretary usually coordinates everything. So that masks over a lot and helps aid him, coaching him, and in essence it's like a job coach, keeping him on track, his schedule, everything together, and out the door. A lot of times in society, and it's changing, but up until this year it hadn't changed that much, the majority of men still work outside the home. And a lot of them don't help inside the home, or they'll do minimal things inside the home. So they don't have all that coordinating and running and joshuing and schedules and things like that, that typically and historically have fallen to the female. I sat in a high school class the other day and watched a child development class, which had boys in it. And it was about 50-50. And they were passing out assignments. And I had to chuckle because I thought, even here we are in 1998, fixing to go into the new millennium, and we are still gender biased in our schools and the way society sets this up. The girls had the planning and the structuring and the this and the that and the something else, and the boys brought the cookies and drinks. And there was even 2 girls appointed to call them and remind them the night before to bring the cookies and drinks.
Excuse me, would you do a drawing for these before the class is over?
We will.
Thank you.
So, those are, I had to chuckle because I thought, oh my God, and I knew that 2 of those girls were ADDs because they were, one was mine and the other one was her friend. And I've been working with them and working with them as a job coach and setting some things up. And I thought that is just so typical of what it is that we do as a society to our young women. And we do it from a very early age on. And especially I see it more as they get into high school because everybody expects you to have this image. And when you get out over here into the real world and you're setting up a house and doing all this, they have this image and responsibility. And it's not the same for the guys. And all the research has centered around male from ages 4 to 12. Most of the ADD research and studies we have center around ages 4 to 12 males. And so we were treating even our adult ADDers as if they were male children aged 4 to 12. I like to have slugged this one psychiatrist who we went up there, and I knew I was ADD. We just moved to Dallas, and what I needed to do was to get a prescription refilled. And at that time, I wasn't taking Ritalin, I was taking something else. I can't remember what it was.
Silo?
No. I think it was a Mipramine or something like that because I had more trouble sleeping than the other. I was staying focused at the time. But anyway, I had to go to the psych to get it. So I went over and talked with him, and he was setting up, he said, oh yes, we need to set up a system for you to make it easier. And I thought, okay, here's somebody that's knowledgeable. We are in business. He wanted to set up some kind of system like it was a behavior mod thing. And that if I got my chores done, and that Tim didn't have to come home to a messy house. Well, crap, the man had never seen my house. He just assumed it was messy. Of course it was, but that was beside the point. Then Tim would take me out to dinner. And I looked at that, and I said, you must be nuts. And he said, why? I said, number one, I do behavior mod for kids all over Texas at that time, not just in Dallas. I said, and I know behavior mod when I see it. Let me tell you, if I could get that house clean, it'd be clean. If it's messy because it just has to be messy. And if I want my husband to take me out to dinner, by God, he'd best better be moving to take me out to dinner. And I best better be ready when he wants to go, because we're out. And I said, you can't treat adults like this. You need to come up with some hardcore helps. What are some other things? I have really good, strong coping skills for the areas that I can get control of, but this is really kicking me in the pants. What can I do? Well, he still was hung up in this. It's almost like we all have to be circles. No squares, no triangles. God forbid you're a triangle. You're just stuck out there. We had to be circles. We had to fit. And that was real depressing. It was real demeaning to me. It was embarrassing, to be in that situation, but it was demeaning to me as an individual. And I went away from there just in an utter depression over the fact that I already knew I had a problem. I went there for some help, and instead of helping me, he made me feel less worthy than when I went in. And we do that to our high school girls when we expect them to act like the boys, or act like they're in charge, that they could be neater, that their rooms could look nicer. You know, and we talked earlier on about some things to put in place for organization and to help them out. But probably the most damaging to the young adults is the she messages, what they've got there. She's a slob. She has no pride in her home or appearance. She doesn't take care of the children well. She should have never had children. Oh, well, she's just self-centered. She doesn't really care. She acts like a space cadet. At our house, we call those blondes. She's let herself go. She's just not very interesting, and she doesn't take the time to take care of herself. You know, there was a time that if I'd have had time to take care of myself, I would have taken care of my family a little bit, maybe, because I was running at full tilt, nonstop, to get everything done that society said had to be done by the time you walked out the door. And, well, there's a spot for a story that I'll share with you later. But if I don't tell you, ask about the Missy House syndrome. I didn't even know there was such a thing. What happens usually from there, from like you look at the job descriptions that are out there, you know, just to be the mom or to be in charge of a household, whether you're single, married, or not. The job descriptions that you have to have in that span and the she messages that are there really set you up for failure right up front. What happens is the symptoms kick in, and this is male or female. Symptoms kick in, and you begin to get confused self-messages, whether or not you are worthy of this. Why are they calling you these names? What's happening to everything around you? Then all of a sudden that smacks into failure to meet the cultural ideals of what's out there for you. And then you have the maligning or shame. And then we're going to talk about some of the negative self-talk that we tend to do to ourselves. And other people putting shame on us because our children aren't behaving the way that they're supposed to when they're little. As they get older, they're shaming because, oh, my daughter would never be allowed to keep her room that way. You know, gosh, you should never let her leave the house unless that room is picked up and clean. And sometimes we have to adjust what picked up and clean is for the person involved. What's picked up and clean for me is not what is picked up and clean for Amanda, one of the girls that lives in our house, by a long shot. And sometimes I, as the mom, have to remember that. And we need to remember that. And from that, then we tend to go into hiding. Boys begin to get aggressive. They want to be more aggressive. Even as they're older and into adulthood, they'll tend to be the more aggressive. They'll go out and start a new business. Or they'll go out and put things around them where they can start that business, or somebody else will start the business, and they'll be right there with them in the background helping them. Girls tend to go into hiding because of all the cultural things that have been said and put around them. There are some secondary effects that go along with that, and one is the underachievement, and that's usually in the area of work. We see girls that will do just enough work to get by, and a lot of that is because of they're depressed. They've heard that they're stupid, lazy, don't care, they're boy crazy. My mom said, if I hear she's boy crazy one more time, I may just have to hurt somebody. And my mom is a very passive mom. But they used to say, she is just lazy. She just comes to school tired. She's always tired. She just doesn't want to finish her work, you know. And my theory was, yes, I'm tired. I've spent up all night trying to get this done, and I still didn't get it done, and it doesn't matter whether I turn it in or not. I'm not going to get the grade I need or want. And no, I'm not boy crazy. I'm looking out the window because it sure looks a lot better than this horrible algebra teacher who's beating me on the head, literally, with a ruler, saying, wake up and pay attention. Because math is not my thing. You know, I was really good in literature and languages and stuff like that. Math was not even close. You know, it's horrible. So you have a mediocre student as an adolescent, and what that usually tends to be, if we don't get some help and some interventions and things put around her, is that as an adult, we're going to see her falter in the workplace. She's going to be in a job position far under what her achievement could be if all the right things were in place. You'll see that people that could be the CEOs of companies or the executive directors are settling for being a project director or executive secretary so that they could be in the mix of what's going on. But they're not really using their talents. And so they get more depressed, and they get more defeated, and they get further down, and they achieve less. They don't set themselves up to be that achiever, just like we talked about the science project. They may want to show, you know, some really good DNA printing type things, and they know how to piece it all together. But that's an ambitious project, and they wonder and they doubt themselves of whether they can get all the cooperation it's going to take to get that put together and the information on it. So they'll just do one on light refraction. That's just sticking a fork in a glass with a light bulb behind it. You know, that they know they can do and get it done on time and make everybody happy, you know, and just go on with it. And so we end up settling, and we allow our adolescents and young adults to settle rather than looking at what can we put around them to get them to the point where they need to be. The other thing is the depressed mood. They tend to be so overwhelmed. I know that when you go in to start a project, or the teacher says, nowadays a lot of the high school teachers are giving the kids what they call, what do you call those packets? I don't know, it's one of the music packets. And it says that on this date, this is due, that's due, that's due, you know, get so many things. I mean, they give it to you right at the beginning of the 6 weeks, a lot like college, you know, do this, show up at least once, and you pass the class. You know. So they turn out these little packets. Well, you know, that's a kiss of death for an ADDer, because they're going to be lucky if they can find that packet next week, much less hit those deadlines, get everything done without some help stuck around them. So they end up being overwhelmed by the task because they're looking at the whole thing instead of being able to break it down and say, I only have to have this piece. If we could get the teacher to hand them a page at a time, swap work for a page, we'd be in great shape. But we all know adolescents should know how to do it. They should know how to be organized. Doggone it, they're in high school. You're in college now. Suck it up. I heard a college counselor tell somebody that. I had almost rolled out of the chair, died laughing. I thought, it isn't going to happen in this little girl's case. It ain't coming anytime soon. Just telling her, suck it up. You're 18, you should know how to do this by now. You know, quit whining, get in there and just do your work. We need a new counselor. They tend to be able not to say no because we've told to be kind, be nice. You know, don't ruffle anybody's feathers. We want to get along. We're supposed to be the peacemakers. They're preparing us to be moms and families, be the mediator of all the battles. And in doing that, we tend to be overworked because we're not only doing our work, but we may be trying to organize somebody else and for a secretary or somebody in that position. So it makes it very, very difficult to get on about that. And the other one is the relationship difficulties, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. We look at when ADD happens, you start to fluster, frustration, when you start getting the symptoms and you kind of blunder through it. And then on top of that, you end up getting disorganized, and as you become more disorganized, the symptoms are worse, then you end up trying to shut down. And you don't do anything. And when you shut down, you go into all the negative self-talk. I'm stupid. I'm inadequate. I should have never tried this project. I should have told them right up front I couldn't do it. Give it to somebody else. You know, obviously didn't want it on time anyway. Give it to me. You know, and that's when that depression sets in. You've got a lot of times when you end up. Is that the she messages? Yeah. A lot of times you end up just being able to get up in the morning, get out of bed, and get to work is like 90% of what, it takes 90% of what you've got for the day just to be able to get up and do that much and get there. You have been in such a negative self-talk and in depression that if anything happens, you've only got like 10% left, and it just can shove you over the edge, so you become even more overwhelmed with the situations, whether it's at home or work or school or whatever. The other thing that we notice different between the adolescent boys and girls and even on into adulthood is that when they have moods, the girls' moods tend to go quicker and can change within a minute. You know, it's kind of like, whoa, where did this one come from? They can be mad, and all of a sudden, okay. Boys tend to, you know, to be that way pretty much anyway. They get mad, they go in there and punch each other, and then they say, okay. And they go on. Girls will lay in wait and hunt you down. It may be this time next year, but they will do it. They never forget it. That's the only thing that ADDs can remember, it seems like. Who got them, and they will get it back. Yes. So their moods change quickly, but they're in that depression during that time. They really are working through there. When that happens, they go into their self-protect mode, and they do whatever it takes for them to protect themselves. And a lot of times what that means is that they're misinterpreting the feelings or what's being said around them. I can walk in the office some days, and because everybody else is real busy and trying to hit their deadlines and getting their stuff done, if I'm at a low point and everything, I can literally walk through the office, not say anything to anybody myself, and they may not even know I was there, go back to my office and just be totally depressed because everybody's upset with me today. And it may be over something that happened last week. Maybe I missed a deadline. And it has nothing to do with that. But that's the perception that you can get real quick when you're giving yourself negative self-talk and you're in that depression. You don't deal with social cues and what's going on appropriately. When that happens, you feel misunderstood yourself, and they only understood what I was having to go through and do to get here. I have the high school girls say, they don't understand. By the time I get up in the morning and I go to school and I work over at Arby's for 4 hours and I come home and I do homework all night till like midnight or 1 or 2 in the morning, and I still haven't gotten it all answered, and then I have to get up and do it all again. And nobody understands. They just expect everything to be done right the first time. And we do. We do. So we feel like, they don't understand how much of an effort it is just for us to be able to do some of it versus all of it. And that's put into place. We go from when the symptoms occur to some of that shame and embarrassment over it. When I'm having an ADD attack, the last place I want to be is in the office, because it's embarrassing to me, because somebody can ask me something and I'm like, and I can't make my brain work fast enough. And I'd say, let me get back with you in a minute. I said, I've got, my brain is on another wave here. I'm thinking about something else. Let me go to my office and I will get back with you. That's embarrassing as a 48-year-old. And I can imagine when, as an adolescent, and I can remember sometimes sitting in the eye doctor's appointment as a freshman in high school, just after Christmas break, sitting there trying to do my work, and all waiting for my turn to have my eyes checked, and just bursting into tears. So overwhelmed with 2 people had just asked me something and I couldn't have answered them if my life was, in the balance. They could have had a gun to my head and still the answer wasn't coming. It wasn't happening. And that's real embarrassing, and we tell ourselves, we must be stupid. What the teacher said must be true. I must be very, very dumb if that's the only way I can respond. People talk to me and I can't even give them an answer. I can't answer what they want. We do some protective maneuvering. That's, I did that during lunch. I'm an introverted person. I have to have people to survive, but I have to have downtime. So while you all were socializing and eating lunch, I was up here having my downtime where it was quiet and I could take deep breaths and say, okay, this is cool. I'm going to get back on track. I'm going to get focused. This is, and go through my little mantra thing. And that happens. Sometimes, though, that's misunderstood by other people that we don't like them. And we don't want to be social. And that's a kiss of death for an adolescent to be deemed as not a social person. Or she thinks she's just all that because she's not over here talking to us. She thinks she's better than we are. Or he thinks he's really hot and he has nothing. Then you really do withdraw, and the need to isolate and recharge is a valid reason, but a lot of people don't understand that. And as ADDers, I probably didn't understand that until I was 30. I just knew that I would be revved up, ready to go to that party with Tim, and ready to go. And the closer it got time to go to that party, the wilder my insides got, to where I was almost, going to have a panic attack or something. It felt like, no, I don't want to go. I'd have headaches, severe headaches, and it was all self-induced. There wasn't anything there. And Tim said, you do this to me all the time. If you don't want to go, just say you don't want to go. And I'd say, I want to go, I really do, but it was something beyond me physically getting out that door. And I looked back, and that was a trait in high school even being a cheerleader and on the drill team and running amok in the streets of Houston. It was still difficult sometimes for me my dad, I can remember my dad saying, "You can't not go to the game, Susan. You're the cheerleader. You have to show up." And I said, "Oh, but all those people are going to be out there yelling." He said, "That's the point." You know, I said, "Yeah, but it's so noisy." And he said, "Well, you should have thought about that before we spent $2,000. To my dad, everything had a money value to it. You shouldn't have spent $2,000 if you weren't going to follow through. Get your rear end down there and go. And it really had nothing to do necessarily with the screaming, but it had something to do with what Penny said earlier in the day that really irritated me and hurt my feelings, and I did not want to be hearing how rotten I was again because I told her boyfriend something I forgot. I thought he knew. He's her boyfriend, not mine. I just had a conversation, and that was bad, and it was my fault that he was mad at her because I told. I said, well, it's not her fault for going out on him, it's my fault for telling. You know, and we take and we accept that blame, especially as adolescents and teenagers. We accept that blame because that's the way everybody plays the game. We misinterpret at work, we've talked about that. You withdraw from others, you blame the symptoms rather than your behavior to the symptoms. The symptoms are going to come and go, they're there, you just have to deal with them. But a lot in the beginning we blame the symptoms rather than our response to the symptoms. You perceive ADD as shameful, and we go into what they call a disconnect. You know, you can almost see some of these ADD kids check out. You can watch their faces and watch them do it. They totally disconnect from whatever's going on there and around them. They don't seek out new friends because it takes too much time and energy to keep the ones they've got. They don't look to move their friendships deeper because it's too much time and energy to do that. And a lot of times they just let the old friendships fall flat. There's a couple of girls in high school that I was really, really close with, and even through college. And after that, nothing. I mean, we were inseparable, and then there's nothing. And a lot of that's my fault because I got cards from them, and I was going to say, well, I got to sit down and write them back, and then I couldn't find the card with the address. Then when I found the cards, I had 50 million things going on, and it just kind of seesaws back in that. And then if you don't respond or make some effort to let them know that you still want to be their friend, they tend to go off. Well, that's horrible for adolescents because that's their life. Friends and acceptance is their life. Everything revolves around that. So they have that embarrassment. This is kind of where it says the shameful, messages. It's a messy house, and then in your relationships, it's real hard if you're hooked up with somebody who doesn't understand what's going on with you, or a wife who doesn't understand why her husband acts like one of the kids, and they have to go behind him all the time picking up after him. So one of these days he's going to learn to put those clothes in that basket. Probably not. It may not happen. My 28-year-old has a closet for his dirty clothes. A basket was just not obtainable. It wasn't getting in there. We'd find them around it, sort of close to it, whatever. So he says he got his own apartment. He said, I just open the closet door and throw it in there. I figured I don't have to mess with the basket. It's in there. It's all going to end up on the floor to be sorted anyway. What do we care? Throw it in there. Shut the door. It's his apartment. I don't care. I don't have to look at it. I don't have to clean it. It's okay with me. Now, the couple of times I did go over there and his clothes were crawling out of the closet, we had a conversation about laundry. And that he could do it. It was okay. It wasn't hurting him. Then you start repeating that whole cycle all over again, where there's the symptoms occur, the embarrassment, and it just kind of cycles on around. You have kind of then, maybe you figure something's wrong and you're not quite sure what it is if you haven't been diagnosed early on as a child. Let's say you're into an adult or one of your kids have it and you think, they may have gotten it from me. In my family, there's no doubt where it came from. It was my dad. Oh, my dad couldn't sit still 5 seconds. If he was still, he was asleep. That was his two modes, going at full tilt or sleep. So there was no denying that I had it and where it came from. But part of the dilemma of trying to get an older adolescent girl who's maybe been that complacent, non-hyperactive child as a grade schooler and then struggled as a junior high, and all of a sudden now she's into high school or college maybe, or out, just started working, is because now that they've learned enough coping skills and put enough things around them to make them appear normal, or as much like normal as possible. so that you do unconscious strategies to mask over when those ADD attempts happen. So a coping thing would be achieving despite the inner conflict. You're that overcompensator, you're that obsessive compulsive ADDer who has to really focus on and drive everybody crazy until the trash gets out or till this project gets in. I was a project director. It made me nuts because I had to go around making everybody else nuts. You know, they said, you just told us 30 minutes ago, I will get that done. I said, yes, but you said you were going to get it and you were going to bring it right back to me. I ain't got to my desk yet. I will bring it to you, Susan. I said, okay, when am I going to have it? You know, I mean, it's like, oh, I didn't even like me. And I can imagine, well, I know what they said. They were saying, you're driving me crazy. And so now I have a plaque that says Wicked Witch of the North. That's okay. I said, I can do that. That's descriptive enough, and we laugh about it now. And when everybody says that they have a project, they say, don't give it to Susan. So that kind of was a good thing, you know. That's that piece that you get put in place in an overcompensation. But you get over-controlling, you overload yourself, you get over-organized. You have assisted living, you know. At my house, it would be called assisted living. Tim is the one that really kicks in and keeps everything rolling around me. And then you become an underachiever. There are things that you could do. Like I said, I could probably take on and be the ED of several non-profit places and have started companies and stuff like that. But it becomes so overwhelming after it gets up and running and all this. I can do the future planning, get all that stuff out. That day-to-day stuff is good, you know, and it doesn't get done. And that'll kill a company. And you need somebody who can follow through and do that. So it's safer for me to be a project director and drive everybody crazy, or to do what I like to do, which is a lot of training and writing and getting curriculums put in place and going out to schools and working with families and getting services for their kids, helping daycare people set up programs that are family friendly and where kids can succeed. Those are things I like to do because there's a lot of variety in it. And everybody says, oh, that's an underachievement season. You could do so much better up on this level. Well, probably, but I wouldn't be nearly as happy at this point because I've been there and I drove everybody else crazy and made me crazy too. So it's better that I just underachieve a little here. We're all happy and everybody likes me. And let's get to the bottom line. That was a big major decision in, do I want to be liked or do I want to, compensate and go through? And when you look at a high schooler and say, do you want to be liked and popular, or do you want to, go off over here and do this, they want to be liked. I mean, their life is peers and everything else that goes around them. So you end up through that grief cycle. You all pretty much, as child care workers, you know what the grief cycle is. You go into denial, and then you get angry about it, and then you bargain, try to figure out how can you make it work. Then you're in depression. And then if you didn't go through it completely, you have to go back to, the grief, denial, and rally through again until you get through and get everything settled for yourself. And then accept the fact that I have attention deficit. Now, some of you who don't have attention deficit or have not really worked with a kid or had one in your home to know how devastating that really can be to them. May look at it and say, that's not the kiss of death suit. Nobody's ever died from attention deficit. It's not, some thing where they're going to lock you up or do anything else. But there are days that it feels like that. There are days that that you just feel like, oh my God. I can tell you that I was kind of suspected that I had attention deficit, knew that I was definitely different. It made me feel horrible, and I was depressed, and I went through all of this stuff. And I had more of an adverse reaction to that than I did being told that I had possible breast cancer last year. And I thought, let's be scared. That's nothing. And a friend of mine almost cratered, and it wasn't even her. And she said, you get more wiped out of this ADD thing than you do this. Come on, let's get our priorities straight. And I said, that's just a major, ADD is a major part of, it engulfs everything I touch and do and who I am. This is one little piece, this is a nothing. So a lot of that is in perspective. And for somebody who has ADD and has been diagnosed and they know, it's almost like suspicions confirmed, I knew something was wrong with me, and sure enough there is. And now nobody knows what to do with it to make it better, because it doesn't get better. It just kind of stays. So the first part of getting started is getting educated, looking at things, just like we do when the little kids, we want to educate those parents as to what's out there, what's going on, how to help it. Then you want to learn as much as possible. You want to do lectures, you want to do books and newsletters. You want to look at medications. Do you want to take? Do you not? Would it help? You know, would it not? You need support emotionally and physically. Negotiate tasks that are around you, work and home. And then you want to look at some strategies. And interventions have to match the level of your organizational deficit. Kenny went through kind of a bad spot, and Brian decided that he was going to move back home because Kenny asked him to. Kenny kind of cratered from some medicine and almost died. And then started having panic attacks on top of all of that. And we said, this is not working. And Brian decided to give up his apartment and move back home. And that was okay with me because he was a real big help and a real support to Kenny. The bad news was that he's a chef. Well, that was good. But he got into my kitchen and he totally reorganized my kitchen. He said, this is not a working and functional kitchen. So his little ADD self got in there and made it functional for him. And as long as he was the one doing the cooking, that was great. But if he had to work and it was my turn to cook or something and I went in there, it was like, where am I? You know, this place is like totally out of control. And everybody would say, well, this doesn't taste good. Well, you left out something, or you did this, or you didn't do that. And they were right. There would be times that I would say, ooh, I forgot to put that in. You know, let's throw this out. There was one time that I used regular mustard instead of dry mustard. There's a big difference, people, when you're making baked beans or beanie weenies. Trust me, we went through probably 20 cans of stuff trying to figure this out, and it was, you know, they said, how many times are we going to make this and make it wrong? It tastes like horrible. Throw that recipe away, you know. And I kept saying, no, I know it works. I can do this. I've made it before. And it was just that missing that where it says dry mustard. And I would invariably go right to the refrigerator, grab that sucker right out of there like I knew what I was doing. Ugh, it was horrible. It was bad. And finally, Tim came in there and he says, you're not cooking anymore. Number one, we're out of beans. Number two, you know, it's 8 o'clock. We'd like to eat sometime before bedtime. He said, you have now been replaced in the kitchen. Go lay down. He says, you're obviously, you know, out of it. And I was like crazy. And the girls were ready to, you know, kill. You know, there's something about adolescent girls when they get hungry. They get mean. You know, they get real mean. They want to eat. They want to eat now. And so they were not happy campers. But the organization that was there in the kitchen was not to my deficit, it was to Brian's. So, you know, sometimes it doesn't help to let them come in and do it for you. It's best to have them come in and do it with you and help support you to do it. It's amazing, I could never figure out is when, you know, the girls always wanted to have somebody come over and help clean their room. Yeah. And I said, why, you know? And I finally figured out after I have a job coach and I have a house coach. And it took a whole lot for me to be able to do that because I was raised where that just was not done. You know, there were certain things that proper young ladies just didn't have. You have to be able to figure this out for yourself. And it took major therapy, you see about therapy, major therapy, to realize that I'm an okay person. It just takes something extra there to help me get this accomplished. And once a week, Mary Ellen comes in and we clean the house. She doesn't clean it. We clean it. We clean it together. And we get it done together and it gets done faster and it works out really good. And in return, I go over and I help advocate for her son in college and give her other material for that. She's got a project that she does out on the side over there. At work, it's Mary. Mary watches my office, and when it looks like it's starting to get out of control, the papers are creeping out into the hall, or, you know, she can't see the chair when she opens the door to look in because everything is piled up. She says, what night are you going to come into the office and work? And let me know, and I'll schedule some time. And she does. And I'd say, oh, it must be getting really bad. And she tries to catch it before it bothers me, because I'm not a good gauge at it. I can't see it until all of a sudden I go in there and I can't work. I'm overwhelmed by it. And that's what happens to our teenagers. They don't know how to explain it to you. They don't know how to say it to you. But they just know that it's not working. And they need some help. And sometimes they don't know how to ask for help because as society we say that that help is not needed. You need to just get in there and do it. But I listen to them. This is one of the things I told the girls. I said, this is something that you guys taught me. I need to buck up and say, I don't know how to get this done without some help. The house is clean, but it's cluttered. Mary Ellen helps take care of the club, and I get all of the cleaning part. So, we do communication skills. In therapy, they do individual, there's couples and group, depending on what kind of level you're on. Then they have some secondary, it helps depression, self-esteem, and relationships. These are some barriers, and they talk about cultural messages, and this was really important to me. I used to end up in a lot of self-blame as a teenager because other girls would come over to my house, and my room wasn't always as clean as theirs. And the back seat of my car always looked like the trash can. You know, when you're driving, you just kind of, you know, kind of thing, and go on. And I'd always have to say, wait, I got to clean out the car, you know, and this kind of thing. And I was the only one that had a car, so they all kind of tolerated it. But you could tell they were like, oh, somebody grab a box, we're riding with Susan. You know, got to shovel this out. And it was real embarrassing. It was real embarrassing to me as a mom with kiddos that my kid occasionally had to go to school with jeans that he'd worn before, or Harps. And maybe that shirt wasn't ironed. It was a little wrinkled. And my kids didn't seem to eat before 8 o'clock. It just took 8 o'clock to get that dinner on the table and out the door. And by the time I got that done and got to the PTA board meeting, they were through with the board meeting and they were ready to start PTA. And they were all upset because I wasn't there to give my piece to the board. And so now they're going to have to hear it for the first time in front of the whole PTA class. Oh, har, you know, let's get over it. And then by the time I get back home, everybody else is upset because I forgot to pick up the ice cream. Other mothers get their kids ice cream on the way home, Mom. I said, really? They said, we gave you the money. We wrote you a note. We pinned it to the visor. What did you do with it? Well, I said, well, excuse me, I didn't pull the visor down. It's dark. You know? We can live without ice cream. No, I have to have that ice cream for school tomorrow. You didn't bring it home. I've told you for 3 nights. And you go to bed and you lay in your bed and you say, my God, what kind of a mother am I? My kids go to school with dirty jeans and unironed shirts, and they don't eat till 8 o'clock, and now I can't even get the supplies they need for school. Everybody else's mom does. Just ask my kids. They'll tell you. Everybody else's mom gets their clothes washed, and everything's done, and everything's perfect. Oh, voila. I guess they're all like, you know, June Cleaver. You know, trust me, my house is anything but like June Cleaver in a lot of ways. But that's real damaging because we set up our boys to expect that kind of stuff. What a joke. And we expect our girls to perform to that level. And that's insane. You know, who cares if my kids don't eat till 8 o'clock? As long as they're not out raiding the neighbors', you know, pantries, we're in business. And nobody died from having a wrinkled shirt at school. Well, Amanda would. I mean, she would refuse to go to school that day if she didn't have an iron shirt. But I have done something marvelous. They know how to iron. They know how to do their own laundry. You know, and so I don't have to do it. I'm just the mom. I just need to remind them to do it. And sometimes somebody needs to remind me to remind them. So we have a chart on the wall. And I said, oh, well, it's not my responsibility. You're a teenager. You do it. You need ice cream? Go get ice cream. Don't give the money to me and expect me to get it. I've got 50 million other things I'm doing. You can jump in the car and get your own ice cream. So there are some things that we tend to take on ourselves because society says we need to. It's a cultural message. It's ours. You own it as the mom, as the person in charge. Do it. You know, I miss getting my poor dog his vaccinations. And the vet calls me up and said, Susan, Joplin hasn't been here. And I thought, well, you know, and he said, it's that time again. We need to get her shots. And I went, oh my gosh, you know, because we're a child care facility. We have to have those shots. So you take on some of those things. We're over time, and this is going to have to be hard down. There's a lot of things in here that talks about how to live with and build relationships and how to get positive self-talks and restructuring. The biggest thing is that you need to look at putting around your adolescent girls and your young moms and people out in the workplaces that you work with. Don't just assume that when they start to withdraw that they don't like you, or don't take it personally. Sometimes they need to just withdraw to get to where they need to be, and then they can come back out. And encourage those. Look for ways that you can help. Not do it for them, but to help them do it. And that's a big key. If you're seeing a mom struggle out there, and it looks like, you know, she's got little ADD kids, and she's ADD, poor dad's having to run the house like an army. You know, those are things that that maybe you can step in and say, what is it that we can do? I used to run over and tell Patty, Thursday is cleaning day. And she said, oh my God. I said, clear your calendar. Take off work or go in late, we're cleaning the houses. You could shove our houses end to end and not tell when you left one and went together. They both were a mess. And we would take Wednesday, or Thursday, we'd take Thursday morning, we'd clean my house. We'd take Thursday afternoon, we'd clean her house, and then we were ready for the weekend. And our kids wouldn't have to be embarrassed to bring their boyfriends over because there was clutter in the closet. God forbid. But there are things that you can do to your friends and the community and the people around you to help them get up to speed and know how to respond. And try not to put extra pressure on our adolescents and our young moms, or even the old moms if they're just getting it together. Cut them some slack. Show them some of the different ways that it can be done and can be handled. Inside the desks, there are, I think our little jumping Jill is somewhere. There's keys somewhere. And there's a little teddy bear somewhere. Oh, here's a little teddy bear.
Here's a bear.
Oh, is that the jumping Jill? Okay, there's keys somewhere. Who's got keys? Okay.
Golly.
Organizing for a jumping Jill. And I think, I don't know how we're supposed to say, there's 2 bottles of whatever it is. And there's candy all over the floor.
On one part.
Let's see. This is RC and Dr. Pepper. Reggie Taylor's. They want it. You can have Dr. Pepper. RC, you know what? RC.